We are more than you realise, and we are ready to partner with you.
Are you looking to change your destiny in life? Be your own boss? Start your own business? If you are, you need people who understand your needs and are committed to helping you make it happen. At DKP & Co Chartered Accountants, we are more than just accountants. We are business advisors, taxation consultants, and strategists that specialise in setting up businesses. We understand the client and give them the very best customised advice and strategies to achieve their goals. Visit our website, dkpco.com.au, or give us a call today on 03 9023 9370. Fast, proactive, personal. That's DKP & Co Chartered Accountants.
Victory looking to build. Barbarouses is quick. Is he in behind Top or Stanley? It doesn't matter! Costa Barbarouses! Wow!
Like a salmon, a spawning salmon. And Diamante again! Oh, he's done it!
Unbelievable kick. Mamma mia.
Yes, that music can only mean one thing. The Oz Football Hour back on the Football Nation radio airwaves from 6 to 7. And I was getting prepared to do a solo show because my man standing to my right, Josh Parrish, has been in Canberra this weekend. And
yes, the notable home of A-League men's football.
I was expecting to see his name on the radio starting lineup. And not long before, I get a message from the chairman of the station saying, Josh has actually changed his mind. The flight's a little bit too long back to Melbourne. He's going to be staying put. Hold on. I've just had a message from Tony Pinata. It was just an injury thing. Josh is back, and he is here to join me on the Football Oz Hour. I'm, of course, making a little bit of fun of the Daniel Sturridge situation over the weekend. Will he play? Won't he play? The answer was no. And I think a few people were left a little bit disappointed. A few people left with egg on their face. But that was just one of a great many weird, wacky, and wonderful things that happened across the weekend, Josh Parrish.
Yeah, very odd. I know the flight from Canberra is grueling, but participating in a radio
real
show
long haul
doesn't
journey.
usually require, the lactic acid buildup obviously will affect my performance tonight. I've been stuck in a tube with not much ventilation.
To be fair, I did see you getting a pretty good workout from the FNR physio team before. So
I'll rub down, the old Omicron is sort of lingering at the back of your mind. So there's a bit of a mental doubt there to my participation, having, flown in an aeroplane. But look, has Daniel Sturridge looked at a map of Australia, and does he know where Perth is? Or has he been given a rude awakening this weekend?
I feel like the does he have a map question is making me think of one of our favourites here on the station, the dearly departed. Oh, it's not dead. He's just not in Australia anymore. Marcus Babel. Does Daniel Sturridge have two eyes? Does he understand geography a bit? Apparently not, depending on who you ask. But of course, Tony Pinata and Daniel Sturridge himself very quickly clearing up this mistruth that his absence on Friday night was down to a desire to, or not feeling good after taking a long flight, that sort of thing. But it wasn't true. He was just being managed, and Richie Garcia ended up saying, if it wasn't for all the fans at HBF last week, he probably wouldn't have played. And of course, he did not play this weekend in the game against Western United, which is where we start. But before that, I will let you know we'll be going through the games for two of the Melbourne teams to start things off. Then we're going to head to a quick break, and joining us on the other side of that will be ESPN's, the national curriculums, and the inventor of the name recognition index. Ante Jukic will join us from 6:15 to go through probably the two biggest games of the weekend. In fact, probably the three, actually. We had Western Sydney. We'll have Western Sydney Wanderers and the Newcastle Jets, of course, probably the game of the round. The Popolution continuing. He is at the wheel, depending on who you ask. And we'll be chatting a bit of penalty strategy when we come to talk about Central Coast Mariners and Wellington. But we'll start with Friday night. It was a 1-0 win for Western United against Perth Glory. The news of Daniel Sturridge not being available, not even making the starting lineup, coming quite late. There were a few people sitting around the stadium. Of course, it wasn't a huge turnout, but some were decked out in their Liverpool gear. Do you think, Josh, this was my immediate impression, do you think anyone who saw the starting lineup that might have just been a casual passing Liverpool supporter had purchased a ticket, saw that Daniel Sturridge was not only nowhere to be found in the starting 11, but not on the bench, and left? Do you think there was at least one Liverpool supporter who did that? Because I like to think that there was, just for the pure hilarity of it.
I was immediately reminded of Otto from The Simpsons in the Stoner's Pot Palace, walking out of the crockery store and saying, "Man, that's flagrant false advertising." I mean, was anyone walking out of Amy Park and yelling the same after that 90 minutes in which...
Well, the other thing about Amy Park at the moment is the way it's run is you can't get back. There's no pass out.
No.
You're out and you don't get back in. I think there might have been a few Liverpool fans with Sturridge 15 on their backs who just said...
A bit like Lachie on a Friday night. He doesn't get back in. They don't let him, especially when he's wearing shorts.
Especially when you get stood up by your dad. But that was a story. That was a story for last episode. But Josh, even without the whole Sturridge scenario, this was probably a... If I was being charitable, I would describe it as a difficult game for the neutral. And I think the one patch of play in this game that probably summed it up no better than any other was the 24th minute, a free kick to Bruno Fornaroli. You know, usually that's a situation that the average fan, given the qualities he has, is getting quite excited about. He puts the free kick into the wall and then sends his rebound into the first man. So 2 consecutive blocks, and that felt like a pretty good way to surmise this game. But what did you make of it?
Misfiring all over the park.
Yeah.
I mean, Fornaroli had a great chance put through by Sardinero. We've doubted his playmaker credentials just based on the positions he's taken up for past clubs, but that was a lovely through ball. Probably the moment of quality in the match that set Fornaroli through, and usually he would bury that chance. He did not. It was a very average game. Dire in terms of attacking opportunities, few and far between, and, you know, Perth Glory, with all of their attacking tools available, are choosing to play very few of them at the same time, which is kind of what we predicted in our season preview.
Yeah, well, I was saying that no moment predicted or summed up this game better than that Fornaroli, but I think no team selection summed up this game or what was to come in this game better than Jack Clisby playing on the left side of the attack. Richie Garcia.
Come on.
I love it. I was a Melbourne Heart fan back in the day. I loved the season where you were our best player and you scored 6 goals. But come on, have a word. Jack Clisby. I'm probably a bigger fan of Jack Clisby than most, but even I draw the line at Jack Clisby in the left side of midfield.
Hey, he can take a set piece, Clisby. Underrated set piece.
No, I will agree with you on that.
In terms of his corners and his free kick delivery, maybe not so much in open play, and especially not with an advanced starting position and less space to operate in. Not a technician, Jack Clisby.
Yeah, but I think that was probably the overwhelming read of this game, as two teams very much still not the finished article, still clicking. I mean, Perth...
Was it a back 4 or a back 3 though, with the way Perth set up? Because it seems to be a little bit fluid. I mean, Lachman, and not Lockman, as I've been calling him.
Unfortunate.
In homage to you. But Darryl Lachman seems to be stepping into midfield a little bit as a holding mid, which shows the paucity of options available. Otter playing seemingly as a bit of a left-sided centre half at times, certainly week 1, which seems a waste of his attacking talents to me. And then Burke Gilroy seemingly at home and the only player playing in position at right wing back.
Yeah. I think that was even confused, the Paramount Plus coverage had it lining up with Lockman or Lachman in midfield as well. And it did seem to fluctuate between the two throughout the game. I thought, when Sardinero came off, he did show a few glimpses of what he might be able to do through the centre. But, Perth are just still a few things away from, I think, being quite the finished article. And honestly, Western United didn't, I think, offer much until really the most important change of this game, other than maybe, Luke Bodnar getting himself injured. He was doing quite a good job covering Diamanti and then had to come off later into the game, was Dylan Wenzel-Hall's coming on for Previch. I thought him coming on, the extra energy that he provided. I mean, shock horror, youth player energy off the bench. We've heard that story in the A-League before. But he was really good. He changed the dynamic completely. My only regret is that we're yet to see Previch and Dylan Wenzel-Hall's play together.
And that, I think, is something for John Aloisi to think about going into the next match day. I mean, How would they function together in the same lineup? Do they switch formation to a 4-4-2 with Diamanti in the team? Very, very unlikely. Maybe 4-2-3-1 with Wenzel Halls off the left, which is what I suggested at the start of the season, him cutting inside and Garuccio providing the width. Because Wenzel Halls plays well when he's got a target to aim at, I suppose. A striker who will bounce balls off him and be the focal point of the attack and play with his back to goal, and Wenzel Halls can run at defenders and do what he does best. Obviously, he doesn't need that situation later in games because there's simply more space for him to play facing the goal. Youth, energy, impact player.
Look, I see what you're saying about the left-hand side. I would like to see him play two up top together. I know it would require deviance from the prayer hands emoji stock standard bless up 4-2-3-1 that almost every A-League coach likes to get amongst, and John Aloisi.
Are you suggesting a similarly pro forma 4-2-2?
But think about no, I'm not. I'm not doing it. I refuse to do that.
Why do you play Diamanti if it's 4-4-2?
That's true.
Unless you play a diamond.
Well.
And then
Josh,
you're dropping Wales and Payne.
I know that I have basically, in the intro music for this show, created a shrine to the man. But can I say, sometimes Diamanti could probably be on the bench. He could maybe spend a bit of time coming off the bench. The thing is, John Aloisi has said that it will happen this season. There will be times where, so maybe the Prijovic and Wenzel Halls starting together, the potential of a 4-4-2 isn't something we'll see for a long time down the track. But there will be a time where Diamanti will have to be managed. There'll be a time where Alex Prijovic is at full fitness, is able to run out full games, and the same for Dylan Wenzel Hall. So I think it's something maybe to consider down the line, because I mean, DWH did such a good job playing in a strike partnership at previous clubs. It really brought the best out of him playing with a more experienced head like Scott McDonald. I mean, I see no reason why he couldn't generate that same sort of benefit with Dylan Wenzel Halls. But I think
there's one other option we're not considering, though.
Please.
And dare I suggest a Back to the Future Mark Rudan-esque setup, but 3-5-2.
3-5-2?
Diamanti in the hole. 3-4-1-2 more accurately.
It's true.
I'm hearing it more and more.
I think they obviously got the win in this game. It did come in controversial circumstances, of course. I think most other
was out of bounds.
I think most other Australian football podcasts have probably dug into that one enough. I think we can leave it to one side. Most people have either made their minds up one way or the other. But even though they did get the win in this game, I'm still. Yeah, still tossing up. Yeah, still tossing up Western United, and I think the midfield is another area that might need some rejigging. We're not sure about what's happening with Rene Grahin. We know he's got a lot of recovery to do from his experiences in lockdown, but it just feels to me like that midfield could.
Have you got any pointers for him to add that muscle back, Lachie? I saw you downing double strength protein shakes in the build up to the show. Speaking of physical preparation for the airwaves.
Well, I mean, looking at me, clearly he should not be taking any tips. Quite the opposite, in fact, Josh. But I just look at that midfield sometimes, and as individual players, Neil Kilkenny, Stephen Lustica, I like them both. I think they add good things. As a double pivot, I'm not so sure. I'm not sure that it's a 26 game season midfield partnership.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I don't know whether Aloisi will deviate from a winning team because they kept it tight. His problem in Brisbane wasn't really scoring goals. It was, and yes, he had an in-form Adam Taggart up front, of course, but it was conceding goals was the issue. So if this team remains stout and stays in games, I don't think he'll see the need for a radical overhaul.
Yeah. Well,
although judging on the entertainment value on the park on Friday, I think it would be welcome, given just how dead that game was. And that was due to Perth's conservatism as well. But I don't see Aloisi really throwing out a brand new lineup or formation anytime soon.
No, especially not when you've got the reigning champions as your next opponents this weekend. And I think that'll be probably the biggest test of this. They have looked good defensively. I will give them that. They've looked really, really sharp. Both Imai and Leo Lacroix, when they've been playing, have been really sharp. Of course, NTS came on at Nikolai Topol-Stanley. Sorry, those who aren't familiar with the acronyms, came on at halftime. But I think this will be the biggest test of that new look defensive steel we've seen from them so far next weekend.
Well, make sure you comment below, especially on the Twitch, which is more live than the rest of the live streams, would you believe? Sardine 10, one of our favourites coming through. Guys, please rate MacArthur's new purchase. Speaking of defences, Adrian Mariappa coming over to the Bulls from Bristol City, his last club, but notably played quite a bit of football for Crystal Palace and Watford in the Premier League. A central defender, can play right back as well. Jamaican international with 58 caps. He looks like a blue chip A-League signing to me. Yes, he is 35, but that's serious pedigree. I think this could be one of the signings of the season.
Yeah, I think, like, I will admit that there have been plenty of times this season where I've raised question marks around MacArthur. I have maybe been critical of MacArthur. I don't think I'm alone in that. I think they've been a pretty easy target this season for a variety of reasons from a lot of different audiences. However, this is a 10 out of 10. For me, I mean, obviously we have to see how Mariappa plays, but
you never know.
He's played almost every season of his career, either in the Premier League or in the Championship, and played consistently as well. Like, sure, he's 35, but it's a good pedigree. I really don't see, and I think it's an area of the pitch where MacArthur could use some extra reinforcement. It's a signing that fills a need. It's a good quality one. It's a good name. It's good pedigree. I just don't really see any reason to detract from this. I think everyone's just waiting to see what he can do.
And where does he slot in? Does Uzcock potentially move into midfield once he's available?
I don't know if that's what I'd want to see, but it is an option.
Yeah,
It may well be what Milicic will.
I mean, they played Tommy Orr with Charles Mamombwa against Sydney FC, which we'll get into a bit later. But yes, they won that game. It seemed like a very specific plan for that one, and they seem a little short on deep central midfield players. So Uzcock being freed up from backline duties might actually be a boon for their versatility and squad composition.
Well, we'll talk a little bit about MacArthur and the pretty solid win they had against Sydney FC towards the end of the show. But I think the Western United Perth Glory game is probably, we've spent enough time talking about it. We can probably just all turn the page over in the A-League men's diary and just, forget that it ever happened, which is probably how Tom Glover and Jordan Boss felt on the weekend when their their mix-up, I think one mixed up slightly more than the other, but we'll get into that, led to comrade Ben Halloran scoring a late equaliser for Adelaide in a 2-2 draw with Melbourne City in the city of churches. Try saying that 3 times fast.
Mm-hmm.
This was a good quality game. A bit nervy
exciting
if you're a City fan, but for neutral watchers, big tick.
Yeah, it was a good Saturday night matchup, main game, and I really enjoyed it. Look, Ben Halloran's goal in the last throw of the game was very much put down as a defensive mistake. Bad decision by Tom Glover. Really hung his young teammate out to dry with that pass, and Bose didn't do himself any favours by
trying to turn
towards the goal.
Blind turn in your own back third in the corner when you've got Ben Halloran behind you.
But he didn't know he had Ben Halloran.
No, that's
true.
And
the reason that he didn't know is because Ben Halloran craftily snuck up on him from the blind side and anticipated the pass so early. He was already running before Glover even made contact with the ball to shift it to Bose. He saw that coming a mile away. It was really good anticipation. And the finish was
But Glover
primo.
is the player who should have
it's Glover's mistake.
Really seen it coming first. But before we delve any deeper into the analysis of this game, I'm just going to take a quick drinks break, which probably doesn't make sense to do during the middle of the show.
But it gives you an opportunity to hear from our
sense.
sponsors.
It makes perfect sense to do during the middle of an A-League game, apparently. Because that's exactly what happened in this game.
Would you like to extend that drinks break a little bit so I can tell the audience a little bit about Lanco Group, your business partner for engineering solutions and proud partner of FNR?
Wow, why would you ever have a drinks break and then cut to a commercial? So strange that would happen in a Saturday night game where the surface temperature was 18 degrees. For those who are listening on podcast, I just took a drink because that's exactly what Adelaide United and Melbourne City did. Random drinks break in the middle of the game. You don't see it too often. 10 copped a lot of flack for it. Hopefully we don't see it again. Drawing a line through that one. But honestly, I think on the balance of the game, this was, City went out to a 2-goal lead. Of course, they showed their ruthlessness, I think. Adelaide were the better side in the first 20 or so minutes, and then literally the first sniff that City got, they just cut them to absolute pieces. Of course, Naboo made that bombing run down the net, the right-hand side, caught Josh Cavallo napping a bit, and within seconds, McLaren had the ball in the back of the net. Like, that's the ruthlessness that has led City to the title, and Sydney FC, I think, prior to that, you give them those opportunities, they will punish you every single time. And most people, I think, when City took a 2-0 lead, thought that the line was drawn through this game.
Yeah,
Not to be.
It looked to be comfortable for City, and it ended up being anything but. And I think that might be down to, dare I say, City's... how do I put this? It seems to be philosophy over pragmatism here. It seems to be a very rigid adherence to a style of play. And I think a lot of the time in the A-League, we see the team with less possession win games. We saw it in every decisive result this weekend, in fact. But Melbourne City, a lot of the time, the areas that they keep the ball in when they're trying to see games out make them actually quite vulnerable. And I'm not just talking about the Halloran goal. I think there were several turnovers that left them quite brutally exposed. And they could have managed this game a lot better than they did.
Yeah.
And, it came back to bite them.
And I think what you're saying there goes back to something we were talking about last week about the idea, the actual concept of possession and how people perceive that as a statistic. Like, possession for possession's sake looks good when you're checking the result the next day on FOTMob, but it doesn't mean anything if you're circulating the ball in a horseshoe shape in your middle and back thirds of the pitch.
Yep.
Like, possession is deeper than the who had the most of it, what was the percentage share. It's a lot deeper than that. And I think there was a lot of that kind of negative possession for City in this game. And ultimately, they paid the price for it. They did, of course, lead 2-0, but like we saw the previous week against Brisbane Roar, Adelaide got their tails up and crept themselves back into the game. I mean, Cassini Engi had a pretty quiet game up until about the 70th minute, but God, he's just so dynamic. The way he was dropping, even in that 20-minute burst that he had, where he was responsible for getting Stephen Mork's goal, which ultimately kick-started Adelaide back into this game. The way he was dropping off the front line to receive possession, quickly turning and facing and just trying to make things happen. He is just one of those players who can be on and off, like that. It's just so quick. And when he turned, shot from distance, it came off the post, off the back of Glover as well. Mork tapped it home. But it completely changed the dynamic before the calamitous error from City's defence.
What I like about Yengi is he just tries things. There's just absolutely no fear about the way he plays. He's always trying to be an agent of chaos, and I really enjoy that. Sometimes it doesn't come off. Apparently, his idol is Cristiano Ronaldo, and I think he exhibits many of the same irrational confidence signs, but it works for him. I enjoy it. I really enjoy his attitude.
Agreed.
There's so much fear in A-League players, and I'm not talking about them being wusses or something. I'm talking about scared of giving the ball away, scared of doing the wrong thing, scared of disobeying the coach's instructions or taking a shot when there might be a teammate in a better position. Yengi has no such fears. He just plays on instinct, and it's fabulous to watch. So big raps on him.
And I think Adelaide, that is the perfect kind of player for Adelaide. I think we've seen this game many times before, where Adelaide get a bit of momentum, the crowd gets behind them in a big fixture at Hindmarsh, and they pull out these kind of results. I don't think this is the first instance of this, probably even against Melbourne City in years gone by, that we have seen. But for City, as I mentioned, this is the second time in as many weeks where they did have that drop-off in and around, the 70th, 60th minute of the pitch. They didn't make a substitution until the 81st minute. The week
Until
before,
they concede.
Until they conceded, it was reactive. They didn't make any substitutions. Well, the substitutions they did make the week before were just both of the Socceroos who were, clearly being load managed, Andrew Naboo and Matthew Leckie. Is 2 games too early to be reading this as cause for concern?
I'm just a little bit confused as to why Nathaniel Atkinson stayed home to get fitness in a friendly game, along with a couple of other players.
Yeah.
It was a bit strange to me. I thought he could have been useful in this game, even as a substitute, maybe coming on for Galloway. It's easy to say in hindsight, but it was Bose who came on instead. But look, I do feel as if the front line should have been refreshed earlier.
Yeah.
It's more proactively, maybe at the 70th minute mark, you make that substitution, and then you've got something for the opposition to answer rather than Adelaide building a response all the way up until the 81st minute and then suddenly changing the game when you concede. It does seem quite result reactive, outcome reactive, and not, Patrick Kisnorbo likes to talk about the process a lot, but a lot of the time his decisions are in response to the result and not the process.
And I suppose there's an argument to be made with you don't want to mess with a winning formula. They were 2-0 up pre the subs, but it's not as if, looking at the quality that City have got on their bench, the young talent who will be, make no mistake, will be wanting minutes, and depending on how that narrative plays out over the course of the season, may have to come to the point of demanding minutes. But it's not as if he can't afford or doesn't have the bench quality to afford to be proactive and make those substitutions before bad things happen. But look, it's a game that ultimately City will come away from feeling like a loss. Jamie McLaren, in his post-match interview, certainly felt that way. That ruffled a few feathers. We don't have time to talk about that one, unfortunately. Some people more happy with it than others. I thought it was completely fine, to be honest. But Adelaide, on the other hand, will be feeling like a massive win, which I think sets them up very nicely for a game next week against Brisbane Roar.
I think Macca was absolutely steaming, and you could tell. But I didn't think there was
fine.
I didn't think there was anything wrong with what he said. I don't know what you say in that situation, to be honest.
I didn't. People were saying that he was throwing his teammates under the bus. I don't think he did.
He didn't mention anybody
I don't think that he did that.
specifically.
And he had every right to be annoyed. And also, I think we do this weird thing in football where we complain when players that they aren't emotive enough. They stick to their scripts, their pre-game narratives, they talk to the talking points, and that's all they do. And then when players do show this raw emotion in the heat of the moment, we're like, I shouldn't be doing that. It's not very professional. So we need to pick a lane. We need to pick a lane. But
I'd prefer, as someone in the media industry, that players gave us a little bit more than what they do, than
honestly,
the media rehearsed lines.
Message to Jamie McLaren, if you're still angry, you are more than welcome to give it both barrels to us for the content. That would be completely fine. Hopefully you can give it both barrels to Western United as they come up against your team on the weekend. I don't know why I'm still speaking to Jamie McLaren if he's here. But anyway, Adelaide, of course, will go on next week to play Brisbane Roar, who we'll be talking about with ESPN's Ante Jukic on the other side of the break, as well as the Popolution. But primarily, it will be time, Josh, after this quick word from our sponsors for a Raw Coin update. A Raw Coin update coming to you very soon.
Are you looking to change your destiny in life? Be your own boss? Start your own business? If you are, you need people who understand your needs and are committed to helping you make it happen. At DKP & Co Chartered Accountants, we are more than just accountants. We are business advisors, taxation consultants, and strategists that specialise in setting up businesses. We understand the client and give them the very best customised advice and strategies to achieve their goals. Visit our website, dkpco.com.au, or give us a call today on 03 9023 9370. Fast, proactive, personal. That's DKP & Co Chartered Accountants. Are you looking to change your destiny in life? Be your own boss? Start your own business? If you are, you need people who understand your needs and are committed to helping you make it happen. At DKP & Co Chartered Accountants, we are more than just accountants. We are business advisors, taxation consultants, and strategists that specialise in setting up businesses. We understand the client and give them the very best customised advice and strategies to achieve their goals. Visit our website, dkpco.com.au, or give us a call today on 03 9023 9370. Fast, proactive, personal. That's DKP & Co Chartered Accountants.
Victory looking to build. Barbarouses is quick. Is he in behind Topo Stanley? It doesn't matter! Costa Barbarouses! Wow!
Like a salmon, a spawning salmon. And Diamante again. Oh, he's done it!
Unbelievable kick. Mamma mia.
Welcome back on the Oz Football Hour. It is an absolutely scorching day here in Melbourne. Josh, I know this is probably a culture shock having come back from Canberra this morning, but I figured you could use some extra heat, and we could always, with the weather, use plenty of hot takes. And there was really, with that in mind, only one person to come to, wasn't there?
Yes, indeed. And if I'm feeling climate shock now, I feel like Brisbane Roar flying in and out on game day. I'm not sure how I'm going to feel once the heat in the room rises and Ante Jukic comes to the fore. Ante, welcome to the Oz Football Hour.
Hello, Josh. Hello, young boy. Hello, everyone out there in soccer radio land. Nice to be here.
Yeah, I mean, have you recovered from your 4-hour train journey that ruled you out? You were DNP on the national curriculum on Sunday.
I drove back, actually. I did not catch the V line. I caught the V line on the Friday, and I forgot how nice it was to have a nap on the V line, just help with the load management on Friday. But yeah, unfortunately, just, after 5 months off season, I couldn't really back up on the Sunday. Yeah, we'll see how we go. Got to play it by ear.
Well, hot day today, but it was a beautiful day on Sunday as well here in Melbourne. Actually, we'll leave victory for now. We'll start off with probably the game of the weekend, at least from a brand perspective. Of course, as you guys would both say, the big ticket item of the A-League this season, the Newcastle Jets, their 2-2 draw with Western Sydney Wanderers. I did not watch this game live. You guys always say they're box office, but I'll tell you now, they're also quite good on demand, so that's fine. Ante, what did you make of this game?
Probably this game more than any of the other games this round kind of encapsulated how the second round was more just an extension of everything that's happened in the first round with respect to individual team dynamics. We saw, what we saw in the first weekend against Central Coast, we kind of saw again against Western Sydney. Newcastle are going to be very entertaining. They're going to play some really attacking and expansive football, but they're also going to be really volatile, and they're also going to finish games rather strongly. Whereas Western Sydney, they have this potentially great team and great squad, but they're not utilised correctly. So they're just, irrespective of the shot volume and shot quantity that they had on Sunday, the quality of shots was rather questionable. And when it came to big chances, if you want to call it that, they were pretty much even.
Well, I mean, you mentioned Newcastle as being strong finishers, and that's something we'll see from them over the course of the season. But they had a pretty strong start in this game as well, and could well have been. They did take the 1-goal lead early on through Mikkel Tadze from the penalty spot, but they could have easily been a lot further clear from that. I got the sense that watching this game, there's just, as we saw in the first week, just such a unity of purpose for Newcastle at the moment. Like there's a lot of incorporative players, the new players, particularly Mikkel Tadze. Pena has shown he can pull things out of his proverbial at a moment's notice at patches throughout the game. But they seem to just have this cohesion that Western Sydney didn't. And at least in that first sort of 30 minutes before Abini's fortuitous equaliser, to me it felt like Newcastle were showing, and you can agree or disagree, but Newcastle was showing what Western Sydney could be. Like there is enough quality there for them to play as a really attractive, energetic, cohesive unit, which is what Newcastle were doing. Western Sydney, great quality on paper, but weren't able to make that same thing happen. I mean, they were literally limited to Bernie Abini ISO ball for the first 30 minutes.
Yeah, and that's not good. I wouldn't say energetic with Western Sydney, but they can nevertheless be effective and expansive and attractive. Not necessarily attractive, but it's more important that this is what would lead them to function as a team. And at the moment, with how Robinson has basically composed this squad and gone about not maximising it. I just can't understand the logic there, despite the small sample size. He can go and this is something that I kind of observed over the weekend. I think Western Sydney may be the most prominent example of this, but they're not alone in the idea or the sense that they can just be so much better than what's currently put out there. Like I said, Western Sydney are probably just the most prominent example of it. They can utilise but as much player than what they are doing to this point.
Do you think it's selection? Is it formation? Is it the players not having a clear idea of how to incorporate each other and what to do with the ball?
I think it's a combination of all three of those things. Selection impacts to a degree, but I think initial composition and however much people might not buy into the idea of formation, I think it's important with respect to starting position at least, because from there, because the defence and the opposition works off your starting position, which then impacts the possibilities for spatial occupation. And so with respect to Western Sydney, I think it's rather profound in relation to who they have on the pitch, which then consequently, creates this confusion as to what they're actually supposed to be doing on the pitch. And so, like I said, it's just this combination of all three.
I mean, I think those ideas about spacing that you're bringing up, I think that was sort of it seemed to me to be most apparent in the midfield, where so many players, and particularly Angus Thurgate, just constantly finding pockets and spaces to move into, always wanting to make that run in behind and support a teammate wherever he can. And on the other half, there was a lot of I was employing a bit of the Ante Jukic freeze frame just to look at the team out on the pitch at certain points. And there were so many patches of this game where the mid third of the pitch was just completely empty for Western Sydney. And even when there was maybe a midfield on the whole, I found that particularly Newcastle did really well to get coverage to whoever the deep lying midfielder was. Like Jugarkovic, really slow start in this game, I thought, because of the numbers that they were getting to the ball. So I think that was really that area of the pitch, I think, speaks to that idea of spacing.
Yeah, look, midfielders impact what teams can do, and however good Jugarkovic and Antonis are in individual senses, Robinson clearly doesn't know how to utilise them properly. And I think, and that's probably the most, let's say, lamentable aspect of all this, because they do have potentially a really, really good midfield. And Robinson doesn't, at least to this point, hasn't utilised them. And he should. But at the same time, we kind of saw what we saw in the first week with respect to Angus Thurgate, and even in preseason with respect to Angus Thurgate. He's going to be someone who will make things happen. He's got like a nose for an action. Like he's got this very good positional sense, but whether he can then realise what he creates from a positional sense, is another aspect or another element to, understanding what Angus Thurgate is and what Angus Thurgate can do as a footballer. To this point, it's been positive, but the thing about Newcastle, they're a team of pretty significant momentum swings, and how much of that is a consequence of the way they play, we'll probably see more evidence with respect to that. But the fact that Jurman has now left Grossos out to dry for 2 weeks running, I think that's probably the biggest aspect with respect to Newcastle, their centre-back pairing. However much Topo Stanley might have been, let's say, questionable in terms of level in the A-League, Burgard was a very underrated figure for Newcastle, especially when he was absent. In previous seasons when he would have been injured, you could see the effect that he had when he came back. And I think that's low-key the biggest piece in terms of finding a capable replacement.
I want to talk about Antonis and why he keeps being made peripheral in all of the teams that he moves to. Why does he never end up being the centerpiece of the midfield? In this team, he's sort of kept deeper. He's restricted in what he can do. I always feel that Antonis' best position is the most advanced of a midfield three, where he can receive the ball in tight and create in the final third. But In this system, it seems to be feed the ball to Dimi Petratos and then he can spam shots and crosses into the box.
Yeah, and like we were saying on the national curriculum up to the first week, this team and this system is subservient to Dimi Petratos, who is one of the most indulgent players in the league. And I think, Western Sydney's ceiling will be defined by that as a team. Antona should effectively be like, he might not have a motor or, this ground coverage, but if you give him the freedom to be able to move into certain positions, he will allow teams to function. Another one we saw this week, to make a nice segue into this, is Matty Steinman. They're very similar in that respect. You need to, their physical skill set or their physical capabilities create certain trade-offs with regards to what they can do tactically and their understanding of positions. And with regards to Brisbane, I'm not sure if he's maximised, and that goes for Raman Akbari as well.
31 shots in this game for Western Sydney. This team is obviously getting volume up front, but they seem to only score off opposition mistakes.
Yeah, so they're not the only ones in the A-League in that regard.
No, they're not alone. But, the pundits were hammering them. Andy Harper in particular, very harsh on Western Sydney's performance. Are we not giving Newcastle enough credit for the way in which they stopped the Wanderers playing?
This could be applied to the Sydney game as well. It's not like Sydney stopped them. The Wanderers kind of shoot themselves in the foot, or at least they minimise the scope of what they can actually do. And there is this perception of dominance, which is, again, speaking of the Wanderers not being alone in Australian football, there is this perception of dominance that comes with possession. And that's simply not the case because they're not really putting the opposition defence under pressure.
And obviously we saw Jack Rodwell as well make a 30-minute cameo off the bench. And so it doesn't seem like these issues of composition and balance are necessarily going to get much easier for Carl Robinson in the weeks ahead.
No.
Yeah, well, perhaps that grey note is as good a sign as any that we should move on to the other Sunday fixture, which was played in a lot brighter circumstances. I think Jimmy Bullard would have said that football was the real winner on Sunday when 30,000 Victory fans turned up in the nice weather and watched their side really did demolish Brisbane, at least from a scoreboard perspective. Most people are taking this game and starting it off with the perspective of what it means for Melbourne Victory. I want to invert that. I want to go straight to Brisbane Roar because we are all early stage raw coin investors, and our stocks took a little bit of a hit over the weekend. Ante, this Brisbane side on the weekend looked a far cry in some respects from the performance we saw against Melbourne City. What do you think was the reason behind such a stark difference in performance?
Changing game state. Quite simply, the changing game state. Brisbane were the active team, less space to attract, less space to penetrate, creating certain let's say, responsibilities on dynamics between players. And I think what was kind of intriguing was how disconnected they were in possession. And that was probably the most significant aspect of this game. However much people wanted to talk about Victory being back, Victory, rah, 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 they're, going to win the title from here. They're back. The fans are back. The sun is shining. The sky isn't falling anymore. Like, people just have to relax because this was one game, and frankly, this was a game that did suit Victory. However, there is a small caveat that Victory did put themselves in best position to win the game and take advantage of the circumstances because they were well prepared. I remember speaking to an analyst who will go unnamed from Melbourne Victory, speaking to him about what he thought what was going on at halftime and what he was expecting from Brisbane, and we were able to use the Melbourne City game as a reference point, and there was an agreement and saying, and basically he's saying, we'll be ready for it. And then the third goal comes from specifically what they were ready for. So hats off to Victory and their opposition analysis in that respect. However, that's one thing that really struck me about Warren Moon in the press conference, because which coach wants to admit that they were outcoached in a game? And that was, I think, there are certain details that he has to be mindful of if Brisbane are going to reach their potential ceiling this season.
Was it a matter of certain passing combinations and set routines playing out from the back that Victory took advantage of in that respect?
It was more the second goal, yes. But that's also born of, like I said, kind of disjointed and dysfunctional dynamics in Brisbane's possession. The third goal had more to do with Brisbane defensively and how they adjusted, over the course of the 90, not only against Victory but also against City, and that's what Victory were able to exploit, and that's why Rojas and Falami were able to come into the game in the way they did. Despite the fanfare for Rojas, speaking of, things and objects at Melbourne Victory being back, like this game and Rojas' performance has to be taken with a pinch of salt in this one.
So his 100% passing completion statistics in the final third don't wow you as much as it wowed Georgie Yeomandale?
Read it and weep, Ante. Read it and weep.
I don't want to hear those honking takes, man. Like pass completion, even with respect to the final third, it doesn't necessarily, like, how are you impacting the team? Getting better shots on goal. Like, where did Victory's best chances come from? Like, this was classic Victory and classic Popovic. Like, let's pump the brakes a little bit.
I tell you which pass was completed, though. That cross under Falami's head, because Falami's not scoring a header into the top corner unless the cross is inch perfect, and that was a nice delivery.
Not just that, but it was also unmarked. And then, or Falami was unmarked. And, speaking of specific dynamics that aided Rojas and Falami, this was it. And I remember talking about it during the game and saying, Rojas and Falami are going to come into this. And they did, essentially. They both combined for the third goal, and it was pretty evident. And you could tell that Popovic had the Cheshire Cat smile afterwards, because he knew a plan had come together. And there's nothing more satisfying than that, from a standpoint of match preparation.
It was a bit like Mark in Peep Show. It was like, stop actually rubbing my hands together. Don't do that. But I would say we have half a mind to nearly overdub that section from Ante before. It's just Ante preferred really not to speak. How about that particular one? But you're talking about
Look, I'd rather get paid for my opinions, but I'll drip feed them here.
Goodness gracious. Well, as you said, the dynamic did shift in this game. Falami and Rojas both grew into it. One player who at least came on and tried to shift the dynamic for Brisbane, albeit not quite as successfully as he did the week before, was Luke Ivanovic. Is it a matter of, for Warren Moon, like when, not if, this guy is given a start? Like,
but even if he starts,
what's the hold up?
Okay, even if he starts, how is he significantly changing how Brisbane plays from the start of the match with energy levels as optimal as they could be? Yes, there are logistical, let's say, difficulties with respect to Brisbane, which is understandable. But from a tactical standpoint, I'm not sure, or at least haven't been given enough evidence to see how Ivanovic is really changing the dynamics of Brisbane from the start of a match, as opposed to coming on as a sub. Because I think he is taking advantage of depleting energy levels over the course of 90 minutes. He is effective as a substitute.
Okay.
Whether he would be really different to Emil Elsnich, for example, is frankly arguable. But we can see there. I think there are more pressing matters to attend to with respect to Brisbane.
Well, explain that to a layman. Explain to me specifically, Ante, because Miliosnic looks like a guy who operates at 100 miles an hour at all times and doesn't really receive the ball with his back to goal. He doesn't control the ball very well in tight spaces.
He does. Yeah, but see, that's the thing. Like, he's willing to receive the ball in tight spaces, but is he willing to lock it in and keep the ball in tight spaces? And that's very similar with Ivanovic as well. Ivanovic will, he's okay with receiving the ball, but he's going to hot potato it at the slightest inkling of pressure or perceived pressure. I think there are, although there is the hashtag clamour for Ivanovic, I'm not sure if he's the primary concern from a standpoint of improvement for the Raw.
Well, if Ivanovic is, in your view, not the answer for improving fortunes to the Brisbane Roar, what is? Like, is it just, as Warren Moon said in the press conference, as simple as the elimination of schoolboy errors, or is it something deeper? What is it that needs to change?
For anyone who hasn't seen that press conference, I think that schoolboy errors line was just a fallacy.
We'll say I was attempting to lead the witness just a little.
Yeah, nice one. And look, he had to be called out on that over the course of the press conference because it's frankly wrong. And like I said, a coach didn't really want to admit he was being out-coached over, in the game that had only just proceeded. But I think it had more to do with complexion than it did situation, and complexion kind of influenced those. They weren't unforced errors; they were forced errors.
Yeah,
and that's the distinction we have to make there.
So with that in mind, their first home game coming up next Saturday against Adelaide United, that strikes me as a bad matchup for Brisbane Roar because Adelaide have these wingers. Halloran obviously influences the game. Goodwin, if he starts or if he comes off the bench, can deliver a ball. And they seem to struggle to defend the wide areas in transition, Brisbane.
We only need to look back at the last final series for Adelaide smash and grab in Redcliffe. And Brisbane lost in Brisbane lost in that game, and it really came to be an encapsulation of their season as a whole.
So Aldred's one-legged performance was a decoy in that respect. It didn't matter.
Not necessarily, not simply that, but the manner in which there were dynamics in Brisbane possession that had a lot to be desired. Like you said, their ability to defend wide areas in transition, and as a consequence of the possession and the control that they had, whether they would be able to realise the possession they had, whether they would be able to capitalise on that through finishing, and they were able to stay in games. They were able to be competitive, and they were able to be competitive against any team in the competition. But whether they would be able to capitalise upon that is a different question. And I think that's where certain, especially this season with the changes in dynamics and who's playing where, I think that's going to possibly be a more pertinent aspect of Brisbane's play this season. And Moon seemingly has to make an adjustment.
Well, look, results of that upcoming game against Adelaide notwithstanding, it does look like a difficult one, but it does seem as though it could be a difficult few weeks for Raw Coin investors. But long term, what is your message to the investor group? Are you saying hold firm on your Raw Coin stocks?
I still think Moon has the capacity to adjust. I think Brisbane are going to be strong regardless. They're going to remain competitive. It's not like they're not making finals or anything like that. They'll be there. But there are just minor details that they have to iron out. And if you have finals and you have 6 teams making the finals, like it's not the end of the world.
Well, before we let you go, Ante, a little word on Wellington 2, Central Coast Mariners 1. I thought the highlight of this game was Ben Wayne and Reno Piscopo fighting over the penalty kick at the end.
Actually, I was going to ask you this on the other side of the break, but Ante, I'll throw the question to you. Suppose Josh and I were in a vigorous debate about who would be taking a penalty. Who would you back in to win that battle and eventually take and maybe score or miss the penalty? Who knows?
Josh.
Yeah, no, I would probably say Josh as well. So no, good call.
Josh would back himself. Josh would pull rank over you. I'm not sure whether he'd score though.
Ooh. Yeah, I tend to fluff the penalties. No, actually, that's not really true. I've never taken a penalty in a proper stakes game.
See, I have. So
there you go.
just saying.
Where'd you put it?
Bottom left. Shape
So
to shoot.
you're right-footed?
Yes. Shape to
Across the
shoot.
body.
Shape to shoot right, and then bottom left corner.
Oh,
Just the old Giroud technique.
I have a
Yes.
worrying tendency in training sessions to shape to shoot left and then try and shoot right and shoot straight at the goalkeeper. That would be my fear. So,
Well,
whereas Ante would obviously go for the Panenka, the starter step.
No,
No?
I'm hooking like left footer. I'm hooking top right.
All right.
That was my go-to.
So the Harry Maguire style Euro final, aim for the camera. Take it out.
Like, look, aim. I was always aiming for side netting on the right as a left footer and hooking into the side netting.
perhaps Ben Wayne should maybe listen to this back on the podcast.
Hey, it was a good save.
Just
It
give him
wasn't a
no,
terrible
that's
penalty.
true. That's true.
Barry
But,
Giddy is one of the best goalkeepers in the league. He's going to keep Mariners in games.
it's a good point. It just seems crazy that in a game it manages to come to that, though, that players are still tussling with
I mean,
You
this is
have
what
to-
rock,
yeah,
paper,
I
scissors
think-
is made for.
No, but look, I think you have to have contingencies in place. At least from this is a professional team. This might happen at Sunday League or whatever, but like this shouldn't be happening for professional teams. Like you should have these plans in place for specific scenarios.
Apparently, it was Piscopo's to take, and according to the instructions from the coach, but Ben Wayne ignored them. So I don't know whether he'll be getting any minutes next week.
It's not that. You can deal with this in certain ways. Like you can, taking away his minutes could be one. You could fine him another. It depends on the individuals involved. But if Piscopo was, let's say, given that responsibility to take the penalties before the games, then it should fall on him. Irrespective of whether he won the penalty or not. That's frankly unacceptable. Like, let's say within a team environment, like that shouldn't be happening.
I mean, fortunately for Wellington, it counted for naught in the end. They did end up taking 3 points anyway. It would have been a lot worse if that didn't happen, but I digress. Was this 2-1 result for... what are we calling them? The Wollongong Phoenix? The Wellington Wolves? I haven't made my mind up. But anyway, you know the team I'm talking about. Was it a fair reflection, 3 points to Wellington in this game?
Yeah, because I don't think the Mariners showed much. Like, I know it's all relative and, Wellington weren't necessarily, jumping off the screen, but I think they deserve more out of that game than the Mariners. And, and even the Mariners in the first game, a lot of it was influenced by game state in that game against Newcastle, and especially having spoken already about the volatility of Newcastle, I think they capitalised upon that. I frankly don't think the Mariners are going to be very good this season.
Well, it seems as if the lesson from the weekend is give the other team the ball and you will win. 59% for the Mariners. How do you win with the ball in the A-League?
Better midfields, smarter midfields, risk, quite simply. Like, we've been talking about this for years, and finally the penny's dropping. Like, it makes me like, if I speak, that's all I'm going to say.
Ante deferred to speak on this, and on that particular subject, I also cannot go into detail. Well, I feel like better midfields, smarter midfields, risk is like the Ante Jukic campaign slogan. I think that's probably a good note to end it on. Ante, if people are looking for your work across the week, and I have no doubt that they will, where can they find it?
It will be on ESPN, and they can read my work. If they don't, I'm okay with it. If so, then I don't know. If you like it, if you don't like it, it's okay. But I'm not good at selling myself here. If you haven't noticed.
Well, if Ante's not going to put himself over, then we should.
It'll make you think, even if you disagree with it. And the scouting report on overseas soccer is a new feature from you.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't a huge fan of the Cam Devlin criticism as a Hearts fan. Just so I prefer blind loyalty, but It's okay, Ante. You did make some good points.
There will also be one coming up in the next week. So if about that, it's always something that I guess even on a personal level I've always wanted from Australian footballing coverage. So let's provide it if it's not out there. Yeah. So if you do like it, share it. If not, it's all good.
Well, I think I speak for both Josh and I when we say that we're glad that the person sharing that is you. You are truly best placed. Ante, as always, thank you very much for your time. I know you've got to go out to the backyard and practice your penalties and show Ben Wayne where he hurt. So thanks once again for joining us. Josh, we're going to head to a break, and on the other side, we're going to be clearing through the rest of the A-League fixtures and discussing a little bit about Sydney getting basically Sydneyed in many respects, but more on that on the other side of the break. In many respects, but more on that on the other side of the break.
Are you looking to change your destiny in life? Be your own boss? Start your own business? If you are, you need people who understand your needs and are committed to helping you make it happen. At DKP & Co Chartered Accountants, we are more than just accountants. We are business advisors, taxation consultants, and strategists that specialise in setting up businesses. We understand the client and give them the very best customised advice and strategies to achieve their goals. Visit our website, dkpco.com.au, or give us a call today on 03 9023 9370. Fast, proactive, personal. That's DKP & Co Chartered Accountants.
Vickery looking to build. Barbarouses is quick. Is he in behind top or Stanley? It doesn't matter! Costa Barbarouses! Wow!
Like a salmon, a spawning salmon. And Diamante again. Oh, he's done it!
Unbelievable kick. Mamma mia.
Josh Parrish and Lachie Flanagan back for the final time on the Oz Football Hour for tonight. We have Daniel Sturridge level of minutes left to play with on this show, which means we have pretty much nothing to give.
No.
But we've got one more A-League game to get through, so we're going to race through that one. Before we do, Sardine answering the question from our interview with Ante Jukic. Should it be the Wellington Wolves? Should it be the Wollongong Phoenix? It should be Wollongong. That is the correct.
Wollongong.
That's the correct answer.
I love it.
But Sydney FC against Macarthur Bulls, the final game of the weekend. A 1-0 win for Macarthur, the goal being scored by L.A. Rose?
L.A. Rose.
However you like it, it kind of sounds like an American sort of Vice City style detective
Yeah, it's
film.
like a cop show. Yeah.
But a nice goal set up by the creative genius, not just of Ulysses Davia, but also of Daniel De Silva.
It's nice what they can do when they're unleashed, isn't it?
Exactly. Both of them actually given the freedom to run when they do have the ball. It's amazing. It is amazing what you can do when you give your best players scope to do the things they are best at.
Well, originally I thought the assist from De Silva with the outside of his left foot was just a stab at the ball and it happened to fall to Lachie Rose. Not so on repeated examinations of the replay. I'm pretty sure he spotted Lachie Rose out of his peripheral vision and intentionally turned it round the corner, splitting two Sydney FC defenders in the process. I mean, magnifique from Mr. De Silva.
But again, as we've touched on a few times in the show, Macarthur showing not possessing the ball, making Sydney play is the way. Often I think I would ask you, is this the blueprint? Have they provided the blueprint? I think Wellington have done this kind of thing in previous seasons to Sydney.
The Mariners have as well.
The Mariners as well. I think the Newcastle Jets have a case to make over recent years too. This is the way. And often these are the sort of games where Milos Ninkovic puts a team on his back and makes things happen. I think if Max Burgess was playing with him, he could have maybe done that. The two could have combined to pull Sydney out of the wreckage. But when Milos Ninkovic doesn't have that generational game, turns it around, the rest of Sydney are left to their own devices, this is what can happen. It's not alarming. We've seen this result for Sydney before, but it is a concerning thing to think about. And more teams may work this out.
Steve Corica in the Sydney Morning Herald today saying, we're not changing. We don't need to change. So have fun with that. FFA Cup games coming up tomorrow night. Hume City, Melbourne City.
Great game.
Yeah, they're going to be fun.
Busy week for Hume.
Wollongong Wolves versus Central Coast Mariners. Mariners with PTSD from the Wellington Phoenix defeat.
Upset. You're hearing it louder and louder, folks. You really are.
And the Dockerty Cup final here in Victoria finally being played on Sunday. That's Avondale versus Hume. So a busy week for Hume City. But they have plenty of new signings at their disposal, as we saw in the last round against Port Melbourne, to strengthen them coming into the game in Avondale. And we're hearing a full-strength squad for that one. That's being streamed at 3 p.m. on the Football Victoria channels.
Yeah. Well, it is a big weekend of football in a cup sense, in a league sense as well. Plenty of awesome football, but we're not going to talk about any more of it. Unfortunately, I've got a 4-hour flight to get to. I'm not really looking forward to it. I may pull out. It may later be found out that I actually have an injury, but that is where we'll leave it for tonight.
Are you okay with our boss going on a public forum and informing?
Yes, but only if
listeners.
the other boss comes out and defends me a few days later on Twitter.
So I'll get on the phone to the CEO.
He needs to do a post in his notes, which is screenshotted and then posted on Twitter. That's the only way I'll be happy
Comunicado
with my 4-hour
oficial.
abrupt absence being explained. But we are stumbling our way out of this. But if you're still hanging around on the Twitch, don't go anywhere, because a big show on the other side of this break, Radio Dub with Pakua Frimpong, a huge A-League women's preview with one of the best in the business.
Mr. Joey Lynch coming up very shortly.
Vickery looking to build. Barbarouses is quick. Is he in behind Topo Stanley? It doesn't matter! Costa Barbarouses! Wow!
Like a salmon, a spawning salmon. And Diamante again. Oh, he's done it!
Unbelievable kick.